So I'm driving home from Kitchener. I was in the Kitchener courthouse today, and as I was entering, I was denied entry because apparently I don't look enough like a lawyer. I was dressed exactly like I am now, and the guy's like, "Oh, we're not just letting anyone in the courthouse. You better have some business here." And I just keep on walking towards him, thinking like this guy clearly knows that I'm a lawyer. And then he's like, "Yeah, what's the purpose of you coming here?" And I look at him like, "Are you joking, bro? I'm a criminal lawyer." And then he was kind of embarrassed and he felt stupid. I was like, "Wait, you think I was a pimp with the suit?" And then I showed him my ID. And then my client pointed out some reasons why the guy may not have thought I was a lawyer. Any of you guys know why I was not believed to be a lawyer? Let me know your thoughts.
Hello, welcome. Welcome to Panther and Cage. Well, there's no such thing as a dumb question. Panther and Cage is a vlogcast where we speak from a unique Afrocentric perspective on a variety of topics. I'm your host, Panther, and I would like to encourage the audience to comment, like, and share this Panther and Cage live stream or any other content that's presented on the Panther and Cage Facebook page. Your contributions directly help to push the conversation forward as we explore the contributions, attempting to engage in discussions that are progressive and extremely relevant. Brevard County audience members and their contributions specifically aid in the formulation of specific tangible solutions that will create a perpetuation or will cease the perpetuation of social and cultural bigotry found in our Brevard County community. Now, this is your first time joining us. I welcome you and your contributions, and I hope that you enjoy this show. Welcome to Panther and Cage 23, Gatekeeping and Special Pleading. If you follow our vlogcast, you might notice that we've jumped over Panther and Cage 22, as well as Freestyle 10 or Freestyle X. As you know, we've been trying to. We haven't streamed for about 2 weeks, but we've been trying to mitigate, to deal with a few issues. So that was the intention, was to make the Irish American diaspora number 22 in our vlogcast. And our intention remains to make that a series. But we've encountered some production delays only because we want to be accurate and we want to get the explanation of the Ireland Revolution appropriate. It would be as respectful as we would want any Irish Americans to talk about American slavery and not accurately interpret it, and the impact it has had upon today. So out of respect, we are actually looking deeper into some of the issues, specifically dealing with the IRA, and we want to be accurate. We want to be respectful. So we are working with this as a team. So just give us a little bit on the production. We are almost finished, but as I said, well, let me go ahead and check out any comments or anything before we get moving tonight, because this is going to be a long one, and I'm going to try to see if I can roll through it pretty quickly. I'm going to try to make sure that I'm able to share this. If I don't go public on the Facebook page, sometimes it does not give the wide range necessary. So let me check that out real quick. I'm looking at comments and I don't see anything. So if you're in the comments, go ahead and you can say hi. We'll check this out, make sure that we are streaming everything is functioning correctly. Give me a second. It takes a moment to refresh to keep up. There's always a lag sometimes, so I want to be sure that I'm catching any comments that come in from any direction, public or friends or whatever. sometimes it doesn't give the notification until it has been set to public. So, and we are there. I appreciate that for allowing me to do that. Apologize for that delay. All right. So our live stream was also out of succession. Um, it was specifically addressing the current community leadership demands, which actually, was actually some of the things that we were supposed to follow up on after Panther and Cage 13. Now, a live stream, we had a Black Lives Matter Brevard leader as a guest on the show. That was Sophia Mazzo. Now, if you recall, Sophia, her cell phone died, interrupting the interview somewhat, as she was actually live streaming from a hospital bed because she had been in an unfortunate vehicle accident. And as far as we know now, she's made a full recovery. Someone is at liberty to tag her if she's watching. If she's not watching, someone is at liberty to tag her in the comments and let her know that we're speaking about her right now and that we here at Panther and Cage hope that she is doing well. Now, recent events in the DC area brought up a community. It was brought to me by a community member, and it felt right in line with the Panther and Cage 13 regarding the solutions that we as a community should be demanding. So I kind of got it out of the way. We actually dodged a bullet there because I don't believe that we were actually ready to meet all the demands until we as a community share the common mindset and understanding of what would be a feasible and tangible demand that we should be actually engaged in doing, as well as making those demands. And we have to make sure that it's kind of a symbiotic arrangement. So I know a lot of times what we're seeing a lot of demands be made, but we're not working together with the people who we make those demands with. And no matter what the situation, no matter what your viewpoint, we have to work together to make sure that the steps are taken so that we can have these tangible solutions implemented. Right now, there are a lot of demands being made. A lot of the issues are on the table, and that other side of the aisle does understand what is absolutely needed. Now, whether they want to put it at a priority is a different matter. We can see that in the example of these Asian hate crime being passed, after a summer of just killings after killings. So that's one of those examples. I don't want to go into too much detail, but I want to just get it clear that we cannot demand things from a community without us actually actively being involved in helping the situation. So I think that police chiefs across America understand that, but they're afraid to say that. Now, I don't want anyone to argue with me about that point because the first thing, I'll give example, the first thing that's going to happen if the police chief demands from the community that the community immediately do something, if he does that today, he or she would be a threat to be canceled. All right. I understand that. For a police chief to ask, what are we doing within our community when the George Floyd Policing Act is still being debated, while there are some Black men and women who are still, right now, still being unnecessarily shot and killed, it would be more than a slap in the face. Now, in addition to the consequences and listen to what I'm saying, in addition to those consequences, there are consequences to their unaccompanied shouldering and responsibility. But I really can't imagine that kind of pressure that a police chief would be facing. So, like I said, this is a bigger issue, and we're going to discuss this at another time where we talk more about the community leadership demands once they come up again, and they will. So the last video stream, we also discussed far-right extremism in America and why it was on the rise. It covered the terror-related violence with some depth of understanding some of the contributors to the issue, like the fear machine that's fed by the media pundits like Tucker Carlson on immigration. Who else is there? It's highlighted. It was highlighted at the Department of Defense budget hearing, where we saw it was temporarily hijacked by Republican representative for Florida, Matt Gaetz, and he decided to challenge Secretary Austin on Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin on critical race theory being taught within the military academy. And that made that portion of the meeting go viral because it was General Mark A. Milley who interjected to explain how the military is supposed to be an apolitical institution, which looks to understand the issues on both sides of the political aisle to keep themselves in front of any of the threats that may be out there, any of the threats to the nation. Now, the last video stream also revealed that the Afghanistan press briefing was another attempt at distracting focus to talk, about General Mark Milley's comments about critical race theory. So you see that meeting, you see the Secretary of Defense, Austin, became a little agitated when it came up again. And that was because he had clearly stated that it was a distraction and it was employed by political interests. And it was not the focus of the Afghanistan press briefing. And that was extremely relevant because the results that we've seen with the Afghanistan withdrawal in the past couple of weeks, instead of worrying about the smooth transition and how that would be, there were segments of society that was they were focused on critical race theory being taught to future military leaders. And, their fear showed itself again. So, that show last stream, that show was supposed to immediately follow the community engagement with Sophia Mazo, okay? But the relevance to the Black Lives Matter being considered a terrorist organization by members on the far right, while groups like the First Amendment Praetorians, let me go ahead and get that image up on the screen while I check out what comment is actually being made. I see that there's a comment, so, but let me go ahead and finish this out real quick. So what I was saying is the relevance for the Black Lives Matter being considered a terrorist organization by members on the far right, while they were groups like the First Amendment Praetorians here, they were considered to be patriots. And at the time of that interview that we conducted, we saw the January 6th insurrection actually steal the spotlight, kind of. And it was evidence of how relevant the direction Panther and Cage was headed then. You can see that, we covered the background of this paramilitary group and saw the relevance for, Black Panther 13.5. Let me get this on. I finally got it on the screen. There we go. Sometimes it has a delay. I don't know, clicking it won't give me that delay. But, like I said, we saw the relevance for the Panther and Cage 13.5. And you can find that video and other streams like in the Let's Talk About It group on Facebook, or you can look on the Panther and Cage Facebook page. But, all in all, let's go ahead and talk about what you just saw before, before I brought us to this, kind of lengthy review. Let me check the comment section. It says that there is a comment in there, but, oh yeah, I know what that is. King, Wakanda forever, and forever, Wakanda. What's going on, man? Hope everything's all right with you over there. So the opening video was a TikTok confessional, basically, from a lawyer identifying himself by the TikTok handle, Style Attorney. Caption read, Style Attorney at Law, New York, and O&T for Ontario, I believe. But, the caption read, Black lawyer denied entry into the courthouse. And it had several hashtags. But, it was an example of the topics that we're going to be covering tonight. And that's gatekeeping. Racial gatekeeping is something that perpetuates racial inequality. In order for us to actively dismantle racial gatekeeping within systemic racism, we have to use our privilege that we do have, okay, to understand racial gatekeeping in social networks. Got to understand it in organizations when we see it. We got to understand it at workplaces. Working through advocacy and having a kind of a tough conversation like we do here, usually weekly on Panther and Cage. The kind of caliber discussions that we have here. You work through advocacy that way. Just having those discussions, you start to get comfortable walking around when you're talking about these race relations. So without further ado, let me go ahead and get into this. Sorry about that. I missed that one. confrontation back in June of last year, where a 60-year-old man by the name of Lee Jeffers confronted 5 teens through Wellington, through a Wellington community on a golf cart. And Jeffers was seen in this, in the beginning of the video, telling Breonna Nelson Hicks, who was 15 years old, she was one of the teens, "I don't care if you take my picture because you don't belong in this development." Like I said, there originally were 5 teens riding on the golf cart, and they were crossing a Lake Worth Road from one development called the Isles to another called the Grand Isles. Now they stopped at the guard gate, and then they began driving to Breonna's house, and it was then where the teens, said or reported that tailgating began. Now, listen to the words here, because I'm trying to be very, because I don't want to run over this, because you'll miss it. I missed it when I first came across this, and only caught wind of it just recently, bringing it back, for the uses of purposes of explaining what gatekeeping is. Now, the car was too close to the golf cart, they said, and the boy who was driving the golf cart tried to pull to the side and allow the vehicle to pass him, but the car stayed behind them. However, the driver, who's known as Mr. Jeffers, scowled at the teens. Now, frightened, the boys stopped the cart and then it ran. The 3 girls, okay, Breonna's black, her 2 friends are white. They began walking the rest of the way to Breonna's house, but the car still followed. Now, as Breonna and her teens, Breonna and her teen friends approached her house, the man stopped his car and began yelling at the teens. And that's when, like so many people being confronted in the recent weeks, which has been, this is just continual situation. But that's when, Breonna's friend, one of the girls, pulled out a cell phone and began recording.
My picture. I really don't care.
Okay.
Because you don't belong in this development.
Yeah. Okay.
What's your name?
Live here. I'm not telling you.
We live here. I live here.
Okay, where do you live?
Why would we tell you any of this?
Where do you live?
I'm not telling you.
Where do you live?
I'm not telling you.
Okay, not a problem. I'm gonna call the gate and have you all arrested.
You're not
Okay.
You do not deserve to be in here.
Okay.
What did we even do wrong?
Now, there was the beginning of that very tense, encounter, at least for 15-year-olds. I think one was 14 and the other was 15, but a very crazy encounter. Here's where you can make all the comments you want, because I'm just taking a quick break between these, because we're going to break these down. Each video tonight is going to be broken in like 3 segments, so I'm giving you enough time to be able to voice your opinion, because I know sometimes I get to talking really fast and I'll move on and you then aren't able to participate in the conversation. And it's important for the Brevard County community for you to make comments. This is specifically designed because usually when you have 2 people on a live and they're talking, other people will make comments, and there's so many comments that flow, and sometimes the conversation isn't had or a great point is missed. So when we're talking, especially about race relations and issues, it's important that those people who contribute, because not only does it identify those individuals who are willing and capable to have this conversation and create, tangible solutions to any of the issues, but it also shows the idea that they're trying to put forth. The idea then can be discussed or talked about, and then you'll find that a solution, whatever can be, or someone can point someone to that solution. So, I just want to give you guys an opportunity to be able to comment about that video so far. But if you'll notice, and I'm just going to hash really quickly what was said. The first thing he said was, "You can take my picture. I don't really care." So I guess he didn't know they were taking video, but he took a picture. But he said, "Because you don't belong in this development." The very first line. He doesn't care if they take a picture because they don't belong in that development. Now, some articles will state that he was directly speaking to Breonna, but even if we look at it and say he was directly speaking to all 3 of them, still wouldn't be, you'll see why, still wouldn't be something that, should be done. But he asked them several times, "What's your name?" All the girls, you heard him say, "I'm not telling you." But in the middle of that, because he said, you guys don't belong to this development, they all tell him, I live here, which is affirming that they belong in that development. And he says, okay, where do you live? So then they're like, why would I tell you any of this? And this is where it just already offense number 2. But he says, I'm not telling you. Where do you live? He asked them again. He said, I'm not telling you. I think he does this twice. But here's where he goes, not thinking. And he says, okay, not a problem. I'm going to call the gate and have you all arrested. You don't deserve to be here. You did not deserve to be here. Now, whether he was talking to Breonna and it was a racial thing, we don't know yet, right? We don't know yet, kind of. But he says you don't deserve to be here. Now, one of the girls says, what did we even do wrong? So they didn't know what they were doing wrong, okay? He never expressed what they were doing wrong. And this is where miscommunications are bound to happen, let alone already the 2 offenses that he already made. Now, I'm going to go ahead and play the next part of the portion of the video so that we can keep, into what's actually going on here. I don't want you guys to get lost, but I do want you involved in the process.
Seriously? I have to wait for that 5 minutes while they're strung around the road.
No.
We were backing up for you.
Moving for you.
And you say you're going to hit us.
You have a problem? Because I can get my grandfather.
Yeah.
You're going to hit us with the car?
Bring him out right now. Bring him out right now.
Thank you. Thank you.
It is because you're driving illegally.
I wasn't.
Okay, but you're coming at 15-year-olds.
So you're gonna hit us with the car.
Because you're 15 years old, you could marry in Mississippi or Alabama.
This is
So
not
you're gonna hit
Mississippi
us
or
with the
Alabama.
car?
This is Florida.
That's the third thing he said that was just like, okay. And that was too far. That was way too far. Some people may think that's nothing. You have to see it like from this perspective. So give me a second. Let me get to it because I don't want to rush. We can be all over the place with this one. But Jeffers turned to the woman that was across the street, who happened to be a physician. She lived across the street. She came out to the end of her driveway and she heard all the commotion. Right now, Jeffers turns to her and says, "Seriously, I had to wait 5 minutes while they were screwing around in the road." Okay, now when the girls simultaneously began explaining that they were trying to back up and move over for him, Mr. Jeffers then became, well, this is the other offense, so that's 4. But he became more petty because he had that intolerant response where he mocked the girl's explanation by doing that crap. Okay, so it was at that point that Breonna Nelson Hicks, she said, "If you have a problem, because I can get my grandfather." So she knew at this point, suggested I get an adult because he's got an issue. He's mocking us, so he ain't listening to us, So you could tell that negotiation at that point was done. So suggesting that she go inside to get a grandfather, Breonna walked to her front door. Mr. Jeffers demanded she immediately heard him demand that she immediately bring him out. So, yeah, bring him out right now, bring him out right now. And the neighbor that had come outside that was standing across the street at the foot of her driveway. You can hear her in the background. She tells the girls, "Just don't argue, guys. It's just not worth it." And the teens thanked her, so you can see that there's a level of respect for their elders. So the teens thanked her, and they were met, with more yells from the man. That's when he, she said it's not worth it, and he said it is because they were driving illegally. Now here's where the other thing comes in. Driving illegally may have then hit the girls, and they realized, oh, I was driving illegally. So I'll tell you how in a second. Now, the girl holding the cell phone says, "Okay, but you're coming at 15-year-olds." So she's again trying to reason. And she's like, you're an adult. And look how you're coming at, 15-year-olds. Like, we're kids. And the other girl saying, like, you're saying that you were going to hit us with a car. So I guess there was something that was being said before that wasn't caught on camera. Okay, so we can't really say whether he was right or wrong, if this was the truth or if it was a lie. But trying to be objective. Mr. Jeffers then says this comment, and every father in America probably understands that this is just too far. And he says, because you're 15 years old, discounts her age and says you can marry in Mississippi or Alabama. The girl scoffed at this. And then one of them replied, the one that's holding the camera replied, this isn't Mississippi or Alabama, this is Florida. And the other girl said, so you're going to continue to say, so you're going to hit us with the car. So the thing is you say this, you can marry in Mississippi, Alabama. That's not something you say to some 14 and 15-year-old girls as an adult. You're a 60-year-old man. Like, no, we already got issues with you following these girls or whatever, because, you know, human trafficking is a very real issue. It's a very, very serious issue that nobody in America really wants to talk about. There are some people who do talk about it. I'm not saying no one does, but it's a big issue. And when you have a 60-year-old man following these kids behind the car, that might be an issue. So just checking the comments. I didn't see any comments. So I'm going to roll this one up.
Florida.
It's Florida.
Okay.
Sure.
So you're gonna hit us with the car.
Don't stick your hand out. Did you threaten a child?
I did not
Did you
threaten.
threaten?
I have it on video. I have it on video.
Someone with your car?
No, I did not.
Yes, you did. We have it on camera.
Go
I
inside.
did not.
Let me see the video.
Now, that was Breonna's grandfather, Tony Nelson, who came out of the house, and, you know, you can hear him say, speaking to Mr. Jeffers, and he said, "Ooh, you know, don't put your hand up," because Mr. Jeffers had his hands up to Mr. Nelson, like, you know, like stop or back up or hold on or whatever, just to feel that he had this authority. And Mr. Nelson said, "Don't stick your hand out. Did you threaten a child?" And Mr. Jeffers said, "I did not threaten a child." And that's when he began to lower his hands and started to kind of step back away. So the girl recording said I had it on video, and that's when Nelson, you know, Tony Nelson, decided to tell the girls to go inside, immediately mitigating the issue, now putting the children out of play into it, and then him dealing with it man to man, adult to adult. But that's when the video stops abruptly. You saw that. So in an interview with the Palm Coast, Beach, or the Palm Beach Post, Nelson said that he continued to speak to Mr. Jeffers, you know, who told Nelson that, you know, he lived a couple of streets over. Jeffers tried to defend his actions, and Nelson said he spoke, you know, about apologizing to the teens, but Nelson told him that it was too late. The damage was done. Now, Nelson told Jeffers, "You were totally inappropriate and you scared the girls, let alone the boys." Now, I looked at this in a couple different ways, and I tried to, like I said, I tried to remove the racially charged element out of it. And I tried to look at this, you know, as it was just an old man who was just, you know, had this issue with young kids. And, you know, maybe on that day he was just bitten and trying to take out some external frustrations. You know, maybe we're just trying to take them out on the children, who appeared at that time to be having a good time. So I try to do that, but those gatekeeping words, "you don't deserve to be here" or "you don't belong here in this development," it takes the situation to another level. And we have to reintroduce the possibility of racial implications at that point, okay? Now, during that journey of trying to assess this entire situation without any racial implications, seeing it again, maybe, you know, fourth or fifth time, it clearly looked like, you know, Mr. Jeffers' behavior was uncalled for because, two, he followed 3 girls to their home. And I'm going to tell you flat out, okay? As a Black man, I can tell you it's already understood that you don't follow any 14 or 15-year-old white girls in neighborhoods to their home, okay? Just something you don't do, all right? Now, you get up and you could end up getting hurt, you know, just trying to do that to somebody else's child. Or maybe there's, you know, that has something to do with the impact that this country's history has had upon me, you know, but we're still measuring the real impact of American slavery because we've been told by so many people to just get over it. The fact that, you know, he was born to believe that he had the privilege to be able to do so and think that there was nothing wrong, you know, is, you know, it's a whole nother story. And it's not hard to believe that, you know, that he presented some kind of human trafficking threat, such as, you know, I mean, he was at liberty to share with children that young of an age, you know, saying that they're basically showing that their age wasn't put in for a consideration. He said, "You could marry in Mississippi or Alabama." And I mean, this is kind of, that's something you just don't say in that kind of situation. You don't say that in a moment to a 14, 15-year-old girls, all right? You know, so I think that was a great job for those girls being conservative enough about, you know, the details of their living arrangements. You know, I talked about this last year dealing with the threat of human trafficking here in Brevard County specifically. and any information about your schedules, any information about the schools that these little girls attend to, places they like to hang out. They're all potential dangers when you put that in the hands of a human trafficker or even a pedophile. Okay, so this isn't a race, if this isn't a race-driven incident, it's still reflecting an appalling situation. So let me go ahead and get to the comment. I do believe there was a comment, and I do believe that is my co-host. And I want you guys to see this. Yeah. Yep. Funny how this hypocrisy of America works. Maybe generalizing, but a lot of people like him will say that this is a free country, but will not allow the teens to just freely move through a neighborhood. You don't deserve to be here. Yeah, like I said, you have to reintroduce the racial implications, understanding, what we do know, what we currently know, and what we are still learning when it comes to the Black and white communities and the creation of the ghettos, et cetera, et cetera. Excuse me, I was trying to think I need to turn on my tablet and turn the volume down in case I start getting some crazy messages. I want to just realize that. Oh, cool. All right. Yeah, that is crazy, King. That's one of those things that is kind of like, like he had the privilege to say that and not blink, not bat an eye, and is still willing to kind of like argue with the girl. The girl picked up on it immediately. It's like, this is Florida. Like, why are you even thinking that way? Like, we're in Florida. Why are you applying that? It's kind of, it says something, now that was the second thing, but the third thing, like I said, the two boys who left the two girls, I would have had to have a talk with them about some things regarding steps that they could have taken to protect the whole group. But to run, I'm sure that would not sit well with them later on in their life when they think about it, but I'm not going to go too far into that. All right. I just wanted to bring that up because that's an issue. Yeah. People are so quick to say this about race, but you look at the fellow white person and know that they don't belong there. Color is the only identifier in this equation. If this were all white girls, what is the identifier that would allow him to know that they don't belong? Good observation. In my own anecdotal experience, white people have told you numerous occasions that you don't belong. That's been I've had that happen only maybe once or twice as in neighborhood kind of situation. I think that is because they've heard me speak or something, and then they make the assumption, because I've heard, even though that's only happened to me a couple times, what I've heard is that you speak so well, or you speak different, you're not like the rest of them, Shuler or blah, so I've had a ton of those. So yeah, it's one of those things that when you start trying to go down that road and you say, well, I don't want to let my personal experience shape what's actually going on here, but then are you really paying attention to what your personal experience is? So it's one of those things, a lot of people will say, so many things, but it's kind of like, because you're not sharing your experience and you're not backing it up with any other, research or anything else to substantiate, if you're going to make a claim, you can't, you're just not involved in this conversation. Some of people want to run from it, and it happens. It happens more often than you think. So anyway, Palm Beach Sheriff's Office spokesperson Terry Barbara said in an email that she said, we received 2 calls, and when the deputies arrived, the male had already gone home. Deputies did speak to the juveniles and made contact with the male the next day. The man told deputies, that's Mr. Jeffrey, told deputies that he almost hit the golf cart being driven by teens. Now, based on both accounts, now this is them, looking at, the investigation, right? Now, based on both accounts, no crime was committed. But at the time, the spokesperson stated that I am told unless this is a low-speed vehicle with a tag on it, the golf cart is not supposed to be driven on the road, as the video shows. The male confronted the juveniles, and some of what he said would be in line with the fact that the golf cart should not be on the road. Now, Could that be what it meant by it's because you're driving illegally? Okay. Now, a Palm Beach Post followed up and revealed that Mr. Jeffers worked at an immigration office, you know, as a U.S. citizenship and immigration services analyst. Now, being in that position, you would think, I got to go back with those words and whatnot, right? Now, the statement to, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service spokesperson said that the organization, which is a branch of the Department of Homeland Security, holds its employees to high standards, regardless if they are on or off duty. You're going to hear that again. We are looking into the matter that has been reported in the press about the individual's off-duty behavior. The spokesperson stated, the video is certainly disturbing, and we are working to get all available information and considering what action, if any, may be appropriate for the agency to take. However, further attempts to confirm this by speaking with Mr. Jeffers were unsuccessful, as phone calls to numbers listed for Mr. Jeffers hit dead ends and an email bounced back as undeliverable. That could mean a couple of things. Could be bouncing back as undeliverable because it may no longer work for that organization. Phone calls could be, he changed his number. I just give you that. Just playing devil's advocate here, right? But he does still live there. So it was established that both Jeffers and Breonna Nelson lived on the same street in Grand Isles, which is a gated community off of Lake Worth Road. You can look that up on your Google Maps or whatnot, and you'll see just how affluent this neighborhood is. And then you can understand, and you'll start to see more of what I'm about to explain. So according to the county records, Jeffers lives a handful of houses away, where Breonna Nelson Hicks lives with her grandparents. The fourth and final part of assessing all of this thing was the outside racial implications, which were extremely interesting to me. Like I stated, that he's an analyst, which I just said, and he can't observe a better way to deal with the situation involving these 14 and 15-year-old kids. He mentioned that he was going to call the guard shack and have them arrested. But when you think about it, right? When you think about it, the report said that the kids crossed the developments and to the guard shack, right? So if there was something illegal going on, which I'm not saying it wasn't, I'm just saying, but if there's something illegal going on, could have been dealt with right there at the guard shack by the security officer instead of this guy following the kids, right? He could have notified the security when he saw them, okay? When he got behind them, he could have notified the security as to what they were doing that was illegal, and he could allow security to do their job instead of him confronting the teenagers, which basically was just an observation that one of the teenagers even brought up, right? They brought that up during the conversation, but I guess when you're at 60, your mind might start to slip. Listen, I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just throwing them all out there because I can hear the kind of argument that can be had to escape, because there's always a lot of escaping. There's always a lot of special pleading going on. We'll explain what that means in a second. Now, I don't want to make any excuses for that behavior, but I always try to be objective to the position when I'm on the outside looking in. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the link for this so you can see it. There's an interview that Mr. Nelson, the grandfather, Tony Nelson, did with the Palm Beach Post, and why he believes it was his daughter being singled out because of her skin color. I really enjoyed this interview. It was a long interview. I really enjoyed it, but I'm going to go ahead and put it in the post, put it in the comment section for you. I'm not going to post this on YouTube because I know YouTube doesn't allow me to. Let me see if I can. Exclude the YouTube. Let me go ahead and post it. It's not working. It's taking that delay. I'm using some new equipment, so it could be an issue, but it should be populated on all pages right now, including YouTube. All right. I didn't see it posted in the Let's Talk About It group, so hoping that it did. All right. Getting back to this issue, there's often too many times, we find that there's always an excuse that is offered up for this kind of behavior of intolerance, and that there's always this apology that usually follows, and it's expected to be accepted. That's the other thing about that. There's always this apology that they just expect you to just accept, right? And when it's found out that the teenagers, in fact, do live in that community, most likely the next step, what they would do is, or anybody would do, is special plead, right? So let's get into it. Special pleading. It is an informal fallacy wherein one cites something as an exception to the general or universal principle without justifying the special exception. Now, it's the application of a double standard. And we see this when people claim white privilege doesn't exist, but the fact that indigenous people of color have been specifically designated as underprivileged for generations, lacking an explanation of that special exception, right? So special pleading is the application of double standard within an argument by deliberately ignoring aspects that are unfavorable to their argument. And we've seen this happen many times before. We saw it and we covered this in depth when we talked about the diminishing that, Pierce Morgan was doing at that time, right? We see this done all the time with Candace Owens. We see it done with Brandon Tatum. We see it done with Tucker Carlson. And I hate saying their names because it gives them a shine, or someone else, but these are the things that they do. It's being done by, Charlie Kirk, like when Charlie Kirk deliberately ignored the aspect of those, the aspect of those 10 white men that died in the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, whom he was advocating for. Obviously, he had to, those 10 men had to be in the Black community. That was a fact that I made sure when I responded to that, that they were in, because they were in the Greenwood, which was located, in North Tulsa. Now, the fact that the white community at that time of segregation was located in South Tulsa, the fact meant that those 10 white men that, Charlie Kirk was advocating for, they were part of that mob that left the courthouse and pursued the group of Black veterans that were carrying their guns into the Black community. Now, you have to be mighty bold to follow some Black veterans carrying firearms into their community at a time of segregation, right? Bold enough to participate in the angry white mob. So the narrative that Charlie Kirk was perpetuating that day when he made a video about the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre was indeed a great example of special pleading. Now, you see, special pleading, it pushes and moves the goalposts to create exceptions, whether, their claim has been proven, whenever their claim has been proven to be false. Now, it allows them to stay very liquid about many issues that should be fact or fiction, should be black or white, should be right or wrong. And so there's always this kind of sort of, could it be, and that allows them to bail out of these logical resolutions, to any of these complex discussions that we have. Now, it makes you question what you experience, as a person of color. It makes you question sometimes what you experience when in fact you're really seeing what you're really seeing. And before we move with an example of that, I want to make sure, because I do believe there is an extra comment. I'm also over these self-appointed deputized citizens trying to check Black people all the time. Yeah, you're getting right to the end of the show. We've seen this with mostly notable, Zimmerman and all of these Karens. Yep, it has been a persistent problem in the Black community. It's been a problem, just period. It's part of the Black experience. But non-melanated people don't have the right to tell us where to be. But they think they do, right? But white privilege doesn't exist. You see what I'm saying? So I'm just putting that out and just saying that. Nothing I said is concrete yet, right? I still got to show you. This is why we're doing this, right? So since I still got to show you, let me give you another example of exactly what I'm talking about.
Please move, ma'am.
I can. Do you live here?
I already answered that question. Excuse me.
I'm
Stop
sorry.
touching.
The keypad is right there.
I understand that, ma'am. But
You can film me. That's
okay,
fine.
I understand, ma'am, but you're blocking me.
Into my building.
Okay, and
Okay.
it's my building as well, so I need you to get out my way.
Okay, what unit?
I don't need to tell you that information. So excuse me, ma'am.
I'm uncomfortable.
Excuse me. Okay, you can be uncomfortable. That's your discretion. You're uncomfortable because of you. I need you to move out my way, please.
No.
Ma'am, please stop touching me.
I'm not touching
You
you.
just was previously.
I'm not touching you at all.
So I'm going to step in.
I'm not touching you, and I'm not in any way doing anything outside of letting my dog go to the bathroom.
And I live here and you're blocking the door.
What unit?
I don't need to tell you that. What unit do you live in?
307.
Okay. Great. I'm on the 4th floor. Excuse me.
No. You don't have a key fob. You are... No.
No. Ma'am.
If you have that, then okay.
Ma'am, you're not security. You're not the property manager. You're not
No,
Mike Herman.
but I live here.
Okay, and I live here too. You're not Mike Herman. You're not Rick.
I don't like the fact you have your phone in my face.
Okay, I don't like the fact that you're blocking me for where I pay.
All I'm
live at.
asking is what unit?
But you're not. I don't need to tell you that information, ma'am.
If you want to come into my building...
It's not your building. You're not the owner. You pay rent.
Sir, you walked up on a street.
Yes, yes, and I've already buzzed in. I've already
You
used
did
my...
not.
Okay, man, it does not even matter. Can you get out of my way?
No, can you show me the key fob into this
I'm
building?
not showing you anything. And the second, ma'am, I'm bound to walk through where I live at. So.
No.
Okay.
Can you show me the key fob into this? No.
Excuse me.
No.
Excuse me.
Are you kidding me?
Now I think it's Darian Tolles. He was blocked from entering his St. Louis, Missouri apartment by Hillary Brooke Mueller. Okay. She was a white woman who repeatedly questioned, as you can see, if he lived there. Tolles captured the encounter on video. He uploaded it to Facebook. And in the video, you saw Tolles ask Mueller multiple times, please move. And she refuses at several points, but she refuses, telling him that, at one point, telling him no, she refused. She tells him that she's uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. Now you'll see that Tolles tells Mueller that she can deal with the situation by calling the police. Mueller is going to continue following him. And you'll see this because the first thing that she said was, "Are you kidding?" Once he passed her, was, "Are you kidding?" So she can't believe this. It's like, this is a joke. This is absolutely a joke. There's no way that this should have happened, right?
Wow.
Call the police, whatever you want to do.
Where are you going? Do you have a key fob that looks like this? You can film all you want. I'm not being rude. I'm not being disrespectful. You walked into a building that I was taking my dog out and pushed your way in. No. Who are you going up to the 4th floor to see? No, I want to know who you're going to see.
So now you gotta follow.
I am.
Why?
Because I would like to know who's friends and why you're here.
Because I live here.
And if you do, then I would like to meet you because you're a neighbor. And
You didn't start off on the good note. I don't want to do no dealings with you. I'm going.
Now you can see that ugly, ugly encounter, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and post the video right now in the comment section. just because it's relevant for the timestamp purposes. I'm going to make sure that this is posted to the Let's Talk About It group. That way we can facilitate two birds with one stone. I don't believe it is not posting to the Let's Talk About It group. So, Cage, if you're out there, go ahead and check out the admin issues with the Let's Talk About It group. Make sure that old Hanley didn't change anything. And maybe that's just on my issue on my end. Because I know that there were some settings that have been changed, but I don't know if it was by him or anybody else. But I'm noticing that it's not posting to that group. Just give me a second, everybody. I'm just going to go and check and make sure. Okay. I know I'm streaming from there. I just checked on the tablet, but for some reason the comments are not filtering through. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of move forward and whatnot and try to check this issue out another time. But anyways, so Darian tells Mueller that she can deal with the situation by calling the police. And, at that point, Mueller continues to follow Tolles, asking, where are you going? She continues asking if he has a matching key fob, but Tolles ignores her. So Mueller then tries to rehash what had just transpired, and you'll see this often happen. But she just, try to, rehash what had just transpired, ending with Tolles pushing his way in, and she was just trying to take her dog out. I'm going to tell you right now that this was excessive because she could have dealt with this by being perceptive enough to see or to observe that he knew the building manager. He knew security and the names of the administration and ownership, right? She could have called the police like a normal Karen. Listen to me. She could have called the police like a normal Karen and then let them confirm as, he was indeed a resident. So I don't think that, I don't think that she would have done at that point because it's really no crime being committed. So that's probably why she didn't just call the police to do that. I'm just saying that was my opinion. But you can attempt to claim, to a trespassing in order to, if you attempt to claim that there's trespassing going on, you have to make sure that, to find the property owner, and the property owner has to trespass that person. So in order for the trespassing to happen, that crime must be committed, right? So unless there's a Facebook police out there somewhere in the land, and I know there are plenty of them out there, right? I know some people disagree with me. That's fine. I want you to. That's, I want y'all to get into the comment section. I just seen the comment just populate, but I want y'all to get in the comment section. That just, like I said, this is just your chance, okay? Give you an opportunity. That Tolles continues to ignore her and walk into the elevator, right? And just before the elevator door opens, she steps in front of Tolls, who also enters, and she says, no. She says it as if she's denying him the opportunity to get into the elevator. Or maybe she was trying to get into the elevator thinking that he wouldn't get into the elevator and allow her to do, or allow him to do whatever he's going to do next, right? So hold that second there for a second. Let me check out these comments. I thought that at one point. I think that, I don't know, it's a strange, conversation I had with somebody else about fetishizing. That just, I just found that to be strange, man. I just found it to be strange. All right, just checking out some things on that. Yeah, she might have wanted to holler. But they were both on the elevator at this point. And you're going to see this. And she's going to proceed to ask him, who are you going up to the fourth floor to see? And I hope you paid attention to that, because that's where it starts to, tell you more about the story about and where racial profiling comes into play with this kind of situation too. But there's other situations that are very similar to it. Now, Mueller says, no, I want to know who you're going to go see. And this is the clearest indicator that she intends to put her nose where it does not belong. And this is where it gets extremely out of hand for a situation that can be dealt with on-site security officer, cameras to document the ordeal. She could have called the police or whatever. They could have tried to identify, because all the evidence is now on the camera. Much less, I don't know why she's walking up to the door. You see somebody coming in, get out of their way. Why would she just be there enough to let him pass through, whatnot? Like she saw him coming. And if she was uncomfortable, then she would stay back. So this is why I don't buy that story also. But she wants to see who's associated with this person. And she says that. She says she wants to see who's associated with this person that, that has come into the building, whom she believes, okay, there's a problem when we get to beliefs, right? Does not belong there for whatever reason. Now think about that, because she gets into an elevator with somebody who made you feel uncomfortable. I know I'm kind of pompous with that a little bit, but I'm being real. Let's talk about human trafficking again, right? Somebody makes you feel uncomfortable, so you get in an elevator with them. That's what, made me think of, maybe she wanted to holler. Maybe she was trying to get his phone number. I don't know. Maybe that's why she was trying to see where he lived. So I think we saw the second one. It says, Tolls asks, so now you're going to follow me. Now you're going to follow me. And Mueller says, I am. When Tolls asks why, she says, because I would like to know who's friends. And she pauses. And she's thinking about how absurd this is, how she's carried this out so far, which is my bet, right? Who's friends with, and then a pause. You can see how this could have racial implications too, right? So I hate to say it, that but you are dealing with America. And she follows this up with, and why are you here? She totally ignores the fact that he said he's trying to get to his apartment. The fact that he said that he lived on the 4th floor should have been enough for her to figure out who this individual, really was, or if he really lived there, right? But Tolls tells her again, I live here. Okay. Then she said, and if you do, I would like to meet you because you're a neighbor. Tolls responds, you didn't start off on a good note, and I don't want to have any dealings with you. Tolls then steps out of the elevator doors, which open, and you saw where she tried to backpedal a little bit. And I assume that she realized that this, had carried on too far. Like I said, that was my bet, right? But it doesn't end there. It doesn't end there. Let me go ahead and get you. Right back where we need, right back on track with this.
I don't want to get nothing. I don't want to do no diligence. I'm going to my house. I'm going to my house where I live at, where I pay.
I would like to introduce myself as a neighbor. I would like to introduce myself.
I do not want to speak with you. Please stop following me. I'm going to call the cops for harassment. That's my next step. You just follow me all the way to my door.
As the plan.
And you see my keys in the door. That is so, that.
As a record, I just want to say
Please,
hi.
ma'am,
What is your name?
ma'am,
And
you
I'm
just,
not-
no. Have a good night, ma'am. Don't ever do that again. You look pretty stupid on video. Have a nice night. And my name is Mr. Tolles. Thank you.
Wow.
Mueller follows Tolles to his front door. And she continued to claim that she would like to introduce herself. And then she tries to double back by trying to set the record straight, or again, special plead her way into these actions that are reasonable, right? Since the videos released, the woman has been fired from her job. Mueller's employer, who was Tribeca Luxury Apartments, released a statement which referred to the incident as disturbing. Tribeca STL family, or St. Louis, I assume, family is a minority-owned company. Wow, look at that. And it consists of employees and residents from many racial backgrounds. We are proud of the fact that we do not and never will stand for racism, racial profiling at our company. After review of the matter, the employee has been terminated and is no longer with our company. Tolles said that he does not want to or even wish to press charges against her. And the saddest part about the entire incident is that this is something that's recurring in America. Those are the words of Tolles. And he told that to KMOV 4. And that he also told them that he wishes Mueller the best and would still have a conversation with her. He said, I'm not mad at her. I'm not upset with her. I'm not going to go after her legally or anything like that. Mueller has since denied any wrongdoing, of course, telling the local Fox News affiliate that, any reports that she's a racist are absolutely false and they're heartbreaking. She said, my only intent was to follow the direction that I had been given by our condo association board members repeatedly. And that is to never allow access to any individual that you do not know. And then I got to ask a question. If that's the case, then why would you open the door? You're trying to walk your dog. Why would you open the door? You don't know this person. You know what the condo association told you. Why would you open yourself? If that person was a murderer, okay, you just gonna open the door? I mean, your dog didn't look like it was gonna do anything. The dog didn't even bark. And I'm not saying, she, probably trained him, right? But I'm just saying. And even if you train the dog to identify a type of threat, and the dog just knew, right? Still didn't warn you. So at this point, this person was dangerous, to a point that you got to follow this man to his apartment. That just was excessive. And there's no way to explain that. Because as I'm thinking about it again right now, it's just absurd. So the entire time Mueller is denying Tolles access to his apartment complex, right? Despite the several requests by Tolles to please move so that he can enter his apartment, Mueller decided that she would refuse to identify until he identified what unit. Now this gatekeeping has been a historical thing, okay? But because being a racist has started to become a little unpopular today, it, like Tolles reflected, is recurring, that's why it's recurring in America. Now, this concept has been associated with racial profile, okay? And we understand racial profiling to be it's occurred, since the abolishment of slavery. Now, maybe even during slavery, as we remember that law enforcement, their original form was the slave patrols. Okay, now the whole thing, like I said, just don't make any sense. The moment that she said she got uncomfortable, yet she tried to agitate the potential situation, and it could just, get even more dangerous. Because like I said, if he was an axe murderer, everybody can relate to. I think everybody's seen the movie American Psycho. So you remember that? So those girls got hacked up, right? She claimed to be uncomfortable, but then she got into the elevator with him and then followed him all the way to his apartment. Now, if Tolles would have snatched that little butt up, the only chance she would have had would it be if there was cameras watching or if her dog had started to bark uncontrollably. And women have to be careful. And I'm saying that I'm kind of laughing too, but it's just being lighthearted about this, because when you think about it, women have to be careful, because I'm gonna tell you, I just saw this video, and someone actually sent this to me. A member of our community sent it to me. I just saw this video of his court testimony, and it was having to do with a South Carolina girl who got into the wrong car because she thought it was her Uber. Ended up whatever. I guess he was cleaning blood out of the car. Her DNA was found in the car and everything. So I guess he slashed her up. You know, just tell you there's a lot of blood in there. Okay, right? So you know, the expectation of Mueller all the way to the end. You saw that where she's like, "Wow, like what's wrong with her?" You know, like it's dangerous nowadays, and you playing these games. You agitating the situation. You know, and there's more to this story, of course. With Mueller telling her side to Good Morning America staff, and I'm going to go ahead and just put the links in the comment section, and it's going to be up to you guys. You guys go look and review that all in detail, and you know, because I want to move forward for the main reason why this, you know, why I'm doing this for Panther Case 23 and why it's being presented. Period. So I'm going to put this, the Huffington Post article, which is a very lengthy article, just gives you all the information. So you can't say I whitewashed the story, I denied you this or whatever. No, take a look at some of the sources that I looked at and others that I pulled from. All right. So go and check that information out for yourself, so that you can go back, review any assessments that I made, anything that you know you were in contention with. There's the information. Okay. Now, I'm not gonna make any excuse. I'm not gonna make an excuse, but I'm covering all the bases. All right, for all the excuses that you know that I've seen whenever these kind of conversations, especially when we talk about gatekeeping, whenever it comes up, right? So one of the reasons why these incidents occur so frequently is due to the current denial of the racial wealth gap. Okay, the racial wealth gap refers to the disparity in assets in typical households across race and ethnicity. This gap in assets is far wider than disparities in wages across races. Right now, almost 60 years after the accomplishments of the civil rights movement, racial gaps in income, excuse me, getting tongue tied, and wealth in the U.S., they remain enormous. Right. And there's widespread recognition that despite the decline over the, you know, over labor market discrimination and, you know, significant gains in educational opportunities, the racial gap persists and have grown larger by some measure. Now, this is according to, in 2019, the wealth of the typical Black household was only about 10% of that of a white household. And many people understand that this, you know, many people understand that this does exist, okay? And that's why the second fact there on, you know, to my left says widespread recognition. However, this is another issue where we're going to see many people pivot away from in an attempt to explain away its existence. All right. And I know that's done to keep people from understanding the actual impact, you know, that this racial wealth gap has had upon modern day society. Okay. Now, let me get to it because we're moving kind of quickly. No, we're right on time, actually. We're 9 minutes behind schedule, what I intended. So, I want to make sure that we're there. All right. Let me get over here real quick. Camera's always a little tweaky sometimes. But you can see that this is, you can see how this simple conversation, how it intersects with other points that are all relevant, but you need to take your time when you're crossing over this so that you understand it, so that the conversation can actually move forward when we're attempting to find this true tangible resolutions, right? This is why we're still hitting this after 1 year anniversary of Panther and Cage, of us taking to the Facebook platform to better educate some of the people who are participating in the very unproductive Facebook, conversations. People don't seem to understand the importance of this until they're sitting in front of the person who, said a very racist comment on Facebook. And you may think that, oh, no, it's just Facebook and you're worried about too much, whatever. But then you come to the point in your life where you realize that you're standing across from this person in flesh, and that this person is the human resources representative for a company that you're applying for. So yes, this has an impact. And I've had several discussions about ignorant people attempting to help resolve the problem, and how effective both ignorant people would be. When dealing with race relations in America, we know that ignorance is an impediment, okay? And that's, the point that I want to drive. I'm going to move from it, but you're going to see where this is, where this ignorance, it is an impediment to the conversation. So what we do here on Panther and Cage matters. What we do here is we attempt to, like I said, give you the tools to be able to have these conversations to where you can stop the perpetuation of social and cultural bigotry, which tends to dominate conversations today. Okay, a lot of people can't bring up politics without bringing this stuff up, and then if you do bring it up, you got that one section they'll cover their face or they act embarrassed, whatever, but then they'll talk about you behind your back, because the next time you see them, they try to bring another political point up or whatever, and then when you roll to the next subject or whatnot, then they realize, oh, yeah, you should have had the conversation with me an hour ago instead of waiting for me to go on this patrol. I come back and now, so there are issues. There are issues, and they can be dealt with by having these conversations right here, getting it out. So if you got a question or anything, go ahead and get into the comment section. I'm more than willing to, to answer these questions. And if we don't get it on tonight's show, I can create a whole show for you, okay, and answer your questions. I know that there are some new viewers there. If you are new to the show and you are watching, if you have any questions or anything or whatever, go ahead and get into the message section of the Panther and Cage Facebook page if you'd like. If you're viewing from my personal page, you can get in there and send me a couple of direct messages. I'll go ahead and try to answer those questions. Those individuals who do email me know that I get right back to you almost immediately. So you can ask those questions and whatnot, but this is a place where you can have that discussion that you've been wanting to have, or talk about some things, and you can do it with the privacy of your own. Now, if you want to get in the Let's Talk About It group, because that group is not seen by everybody, I assume you can get in there and you can ask the questions there, and we can share the information there. So there's several opportunities or several ways that you can, to reach out or whatnot and talk about an issue. Do also know that we are building to the Black on Black violence in the Black community conversation. We just have to address a few issues on the side, so that when we do bring this up or whatever, you understand the context and you're relevant in, your solutions or your opinions regarding the matter. Now, with that being said, it's a lot. Let's get on to the reason why I brought this up for tonight's stream. So the main course. Let me get some of this stuff off. Let's get back to where we need to be. And here we go.
Overnight, a protest breaking out at the home of a Fort Jackson soldier who was caught on video harassing and assaulting a Black man walking in his South Carolina neighborhood. Angry community members surrounded the home of Jonathan Pentland in a peaceful protest, but it's reported the protest did become violent as the night wore on. Jonathan Pentland was charged with assault and battery in the 3rd degree after a confrontation in Columbia, South Carolina turned physical. A video of the assault began circulating on social media on Monday, where Pentland is seen confronting the victim on the sidewalk and instructing him to move away, pushing him after he refuses. It has been confirmed that Pentland is actively serving in the U.S. Army and is assigned to Fort Jackson. His commanding general has been briefed in this incident, and they are fully cooperating with law enforcement.
All right. Those of you who saw Panther and Cage 18, where we dealt with the reactions from the Derek Chauvin trial, know that we did cover this along with Ma'Khia Bryant, Anthony Thompson, I believe, but we did cover this before, and I didn't go into it depth then, and go into it in depth then, because I want to wait for the the reactions. I want to wait for the information because the video was so vague. Now, we saw the video already before. I will show the video breaking it down into 3 parts again for those who have never seen the video, but I'm not going to play the video on whole for right now. I'm just going to go right into it. Okay. 42-year-old Fort Jackson drill sergeant by the name of Jonathan Pentland was observed in a video pushing and verbally assaulting 22-year-old DeAndre Williams back in April of this year. Now, a woman by the name of Shade McCullum saw DeAndre in distress, and she knew that he hadn't done anything wrong, so she started reporting for DeAndre's safety. She cited that before she started to record, Pentland had slapped the phone, Williams's or DeAndre's phone out of his hands, and he stepped on it and pushed DeAndre several times. Johnson and her friend, Knight Osborne, Cheryl Johnson and her friend Yvonne Knight Osborne. They walked up and they intervened to de-escalate the situation. Johnson and her friend waited while with DeAndre until the police arrived. And even though they repeatedly informed the police officer at that time that DeAndre was assaulted, when Pentland slapped his hand and his cell phone fell and cracked, the officer told them that the supervisor that his supervisor told him that he could only charge Pentland with malicious injury to property and not to assault, right? Now, Sade filmed the video, and Cheryl Johnson posted the video of showing Pentland shove DeAndre while he was on the sidewalk of the South Carolina neighborhood, and they posted that on Twitter. Now, the video went viral. So the community came together in protest, and the incident, as you saw, the incident caught national attention. After the video went viral on April 14th, Pentland was arrested and charged with a misdemeanor 3rd-degree assault and battery. Okay, that's just reviewing what we already knew. But here's where it gets interesting. Now, after hundreds of Twitter users sent the video to accounts associated with Fort Jackson, many were accusing Pentland of displaying racist behavior and asking if the Army condoned it. Fort Jackson officials were made aware of the video, and the Criminal Investigative Division, Army CID, began conducting a cooperative investigation with the Richland County Sheriff's Department. Now, the police the next day, Fort Jackson Commanding General Milford Beagle Jr. tweeted and posted on Facebook. And their post read, Fort Jackson officials are aware of the video taken at the summit, and it now has our full attention. This type of behavior is not consistent with our Army values and will not be condoned. We have begun our own investigation and are working with the local authorities. Thank you to the community for bringing this to our attention, and we will get to the bottom of this as soon as possible. Fort Jackson Command Sergeant Major Filson Taverner said on Twitter that after Pentland's arrest, the Department of Justice at the federal level is also looking into the incident, and the command team, our Criminal Investigative Division agents, and our staff judge advocates are all engaged in their professional counterparts and civil authorities to seek the facts, which will determine how the investigations progress, right? In the video, DeAndre can be heard explaining to Jonathan and Cassie Pentland, the woman you will hear instigating in the background, that he was walking when their neighbor ran out of her house. Now, before he could finish explaining, he was interrupted by the badgering of Cassie Pentland's Karen call for attention. Now, when I say Karen call, what I'm talking about is that tackling, that yada, 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 all of that extra stuff, just your theatrics, right? Instead of actually assessing the situation. So that's what I mean when I say the Karen call, okay? Jonathan Pentland and his wife talked over. They overtalked DeAndre, making the initial video very confusing to ascertain what was actually transpiring. Now, while all of the screaming was going on, you will see in the background a woman named Cheryl Johnson, who, like I said, she was walking with her friend in the neighborhood. And her friend's name is technically, her first name is Vignetta, which you heard me say Yvonne, but it's Vignetta Yvonne Knight Osborne. Now, they were watching the incident as it was unfolding, and I believe that they were recording as they were walking by. So that could have been why initially the report stated that Cheryl Johnson had posted another video online. She may have had a different perspective, but her video probably was just another angle of what Sade McCullum reported. But tonight, when we review this, we're going to review the incident breaking down the first portion of the Sade McCullum video in 3 parts and some of the facts that are surrounding the situation.
Go away right now.
All the police.
Hey, they've already been called. They're just waiting.
Picking fights with who?
You know what? Maybe you should hang out a little longer. We'll
Let's
see
go.
how it goes. Then we won't have to get the report by
What
ourselves.
is it you're doing here?
Walking.
Then
walk.
Okay, that's what I was doing. She came out of house. They ran
Well, you've been here like 15 minutes now.
Let's go. Walk away.
Keep walking.
Walk away.
I'm walking.
Walk away right now. You need help?
You got this on camera.
I'm happy to help you. I didn't hit you. There's a difference between
Pretty sure
pushing
you were
you.
the aggressor, buddy.
You're aggressing on their neighborhood.
Someone came running.
Walk back.
You better walk away. You walk away. You're talking to my wife right now.
DeAndre Williams is apparently walking around in his Summit neighborhood. At least that's what the report said, right? He was walking around that Summit neighborhood subdivision with a woman who had a previous incident with Mr. Williams, ran out of her house, and somehow she ran over to the Pentland's front door, summoning Jonathan Pentland to deal with Mr. Williams. That allegedly was the blonde woman, the blonde-haired woman in the dark color shirt and the green shorts that you saw standing there in the background behind DeAndre. Now, there's a lot to this story, so I'm gonna try to keep, on track. I just keep hearing her voice. Well, you've been here 15 minutes now. Like, oh boy. Jonathan Pentland approached DeAndre and he began yelling at him, questioning, what was, he doing there and to get out of their neighborhood. During that time of physical contact occurred enough, to make DeAndre's phone fall and break, right? But you hear Pentland's wife, Kathy, you hear, she's heard telling DeAndre that the police had already been called and they were on their way, and that, they would be making a report. So apparently, and I say they, but, I gotta say the lady in the background with the dark color shirt and the green shorts with the blonde hair standing in the back, her last name was Hernandez. I'm just going to give you that information now so that it is relevant, so it makes sense. Now, so they, Hernandez and the Pentlands, believe that something criminal had occurred, enough for them to call the police, right? That's just assumption. You'll see where this goes. We can assume that, because DeAndre replied, picking fights with who, it was insinuated that Jonathan Pentland, by Jonathan Pentland, that was what they have felt was egregious enough to call the police. It's just an assumption, right? Now, being prompted several times to walk away by Jonathan Pentland, DeAndre looks over to Sade McCullum and asks, "You got this on camera?" And it was at that point when Jonathan Pentland tells DeAndre, "I'm happy to help you." DeAndre attempted to explain that he was attempting to walk away, but Jonathan Pentland hit him. Now, Pentland then denies it, saying, "I didn't hit you." And it was here where the video, you can clearly see, you're going to clearly see them talk about the assault. Jonathan Pentland admits to pushing DeAndre, but Pentland says there's a big difference in him pushing him and hurting him. You heard that. And this is said after Cassie, had that traditional Karen style instigating. "Pretty sure you were the aggressor, buddy." I like to imitate her. DeAndre questions Cassie's accusation. And he says, "I'm the aggressor when someone else comes running out of their house." And before he can finish. Like I said, that's when the Karen calls happen. So let me check this out and make sure no comments. Just want to make sure before we move forward because we are trotting along right now. No comments. I'm looking. Awesome. All right, now here's where things become extremely relevant for everyone. All right. You can see that the Pentland's wife is attempting to create this narrative that we're not seeing right now in this incident. You know, it does not make any sense for DeAndre to be the aggressor when it looks like the video is clearly showing he's trying to walk around and Jonathan Pentland is, you know, is following him while all this is occurring, right? Now, the narrative that says that DeAndre aggressively walked up to Jonathan Pentland after Jonathan Pentland walked out of his house appears to be extremely problematic when the police are already scheduled to get involved. And this is important. Why? Because this is how young, you know, how dead young black men become, you know, the victim, right? And it doesn't behoove them to explain it in that way because the first response of the usual, and we're talking about the racist crowd, right? The first response from white America is that the black man is always playing the victim, all right? Every show we have a negative narrative, right? And we always try to address it. And this is one of the main reasons why we, you know, do this show, because they, instead of people having these conversations, they perpetuate these narratives. And you wonder, where the heck did they learn this narrative? Well, the narrative that you've heard quite often over the last, you know, couple of years, but I'm sure you've heard it the last year because it finally gets brought to the attention, is that the black man is always playing the victim. Now, I know some people out there that probably viewers, and you probably said this yourself. But for the video, you can see the frustration, the look of, I feel like giving up on DeAndre's face. And it looks like this situation appears to be hopeless for him. But in fact, he looks over at Sade and asks, you got this on camera? And it's almost like his hope in this incident being recorded for later review is the only hope that he has. You know, this type of delaying, you know, or, you know, delaying of reprieve or this delayed hope of exoneration, that's not good old American freedom. Okay? It's a part of the black experience in America. So it's a shame that the black man's hope is in technology, right? You know, hope that this video camera attached to the police officer's home, you know, this video camera that's attached to police officers or the home video surveillance, you know, is actually going to tell the history correctly. You know, where is the American pride in that? You know, we had a conversation a while back, and the conversation was about defining what is freedom and what is freedom to the African American. Some of these terms of patriot and pride and these things, and what does justice look like for black, you know, for black people, African Americans, and people of color in America. It's a very important conversation. And that's the reason why we do this kind of stuff, because if you have that conversation, you're going to be wondering, you know, what the answer is. But just wanted to bring that up. This is the negative narrative that we are addressing tonight, as we address many negative narratives, but this is one of the main key negative narratives that we are going to talk about and we are going to eliminate, okay? So the situation requires us to look at this situation with the Pentlands, again, with a little more depth. All right, so get ready. Here comes number 2. And I want to be able to tell you that there, you know, you look at the words, you don't have to on the slide or anything like that, but know that this information or whatever is trying to walk you through and identify the points of when this, you know, these kind of things are happening. Okay?
Right now.
That's your wife?
Walk away.
I didn't do
Walk
that.
away.
Your wife is speaking.
Check it out. You either walk away or I'm going to carry your ass out of here.
Dude, if you touch
What do you
me,
want to do?
You better not touch me.
Or
I'm
what?
not arguing.
What are you going to do?
You up on me?
Let's go. Walk away.
I didn't do anything.
I'm about to do something to you. You better start walking.
I didn't do anything to her.
You better start walking
So
right
when you
now.
come after me like that,
I ain't coming after you. You're in the wrong neighborhood, motherfucker. Get out. Get out.
I live this way.
Where? Where's your house? What's your address?
Maybe we walk you home.
can't walk, you know.
Well, you bet. You want to bet what I can do?
I live here.
Okay,
Right, you're harassing the neighborhood.
Anyone walking through the neighborhood I live in.
Where? But check it out. We are a tight-knit community.
Okay.
We
How
take
long
care
have
of
you
each
been
other.
here? How long have you
Hell of a
been
lot longer than your ass, because I have never seen you before in my
How long
life.
have you been living here?
that's
Why
none of
does
your
that even
business.
matter to you?
How long have you been
It
living
doesn't
here?
matter. You know what? Get the hell out of my face. Get out of my face.
You walked up to me.
Check it out, motherfucker. I ain't playing with you. You either get your ass moving, or I'm gonna move you.
You smell drunk.
You want to bet?
You are drunk.
I'm about to show you what I can do.
At that point, Cassie began creating a narrative. And Jonathan, he also, substantiated that narrative, right? You're aggressing on the neighborhood. Okay. So he basically was saying exactly what, he felt that DeAndre was doing, that he was aggressing on the neighborhood. This is a lie. And this happens. And this is where young men, lose their life. Okay. And it was there in that moment that we already, see that this frustrating incident, this is where it escalated, right? Pentland pushed DeAndre saying, you better walk away. Pentland gets into DeAndre's personal space, pushing up on him saying, you walk away. You're talking to my wife right now. And it's apparent that Jonathan Pentland is agitated, at that moment because DeAndre attempted to speak to his wife, right? DeAndre appeared that he didn't even know that the woman speaking was his wife. And of course, she was instigating in the background, right? So she's instigating, and then you're pushing up on this, young man, and you're like, telling him to walk away, right? But she's just instigating the situation. So DeAndre asked and said, "That's your wife?" And that's where I kind of felt like, there was much more to this, than it simply just being a case of DeAndre harassing people in the neighborhood. And I wasn't even sure if his mental capacity was a factor. And that was something that, we assessed when we did the Panther and Cage, where we talked about Elijah McClain. And we did 5 hours of content, 2 shows where we talked about Elijah McClain and the fact that, that he had, there was a factor that he had autism, and that, what it was like to, to be, to have this issue. And, so we wondered, I just wondered about his mental capacity, right? But DeAndre told Jonathan at that moment that his wife was speaking to him, and he was insinuating he was just trying to respond to her. And the reason why is because she was creating that narrative. She was creating that narrative. She said, and you'll see she was saying like he's picking a fight or whatever, and this is totally untrue, right? It's hard to hear, but I would bet that, that what was said, it could be infuriating to Pentland, right? So especially when we talk about the allegations surrounding the particular incident, which we'll do that in the future, right? But it's here where the threat of physical contact is issued by Jonathan Pentland. When DeAndre told Jonathan that he, you better not touch him, Pentland then questioned DeAndre, what are you going to do? That made it appear to be bullying, right? Just the appearance we're talking about. Because I know it's bullying, but, we're just talking about just the appearance. Now, DeAndre says, I didn't do anything to you, to which Jonathan replies, I'm about to do something to you. That's another vague threat, right? DeAndre says, I didn't do anything to her, as he pointed to the neighbor, which was Hernandez in the back, who she ran outside to get Jonathan out of the house Jonathan Pentland out of the house to deal with DeAndre walking down the street, right? DeAndre says, so you come after me like that? Pentland says, I didn't come after you. Of course, he's denying it, but you see him in his face. And you can see where the perpetuation of distorted facts is already making this confusing incident very convoluted. And if you still don't buy that, wait until we cover some more of these facts that just came out recently. Now, the conversation or the argument that, became interesting when you heard Jonathan Pentland saying, you're in the wrong neighborhood, mother, right? Get out. Again, it's where we come to a situation where you might have to put, racial implications in here or whatever. The wrong neighborhood. Who are you to define what neighborhood is the right or wrong neighborhood? That's an issue I found that actually got me blocked in the Titusville crime group when I brought up what makes a white community and what makes a black community, because there was this huge conversation about it, right? Yes, everybody out there, they did block me from that group. That's fine. It just confirms the racism that, you know, created the need for this kind of show here in Brevard County. So when they say that, oh, it's not in Brevard County, oh yeah, it's all up and down Brevard County. I've had conversations with people. Let's not try to play that game, okay? So DeAndre informs Jonathan that he lives there in the Summit subdivision after Jonathan Pentland told him he's in the wrong neighborhood, okay? Another situation. That's when Jonathan Pentland asks, what's your address? And then Cassie says, maybe we'll walk you home. All of that, insinuating that that would be DeAndre's only places at home, and he does not have the privilege of walking within the Summit subdivision neighborhood. Now, this is something, and keep in mind too, we're talking about South Carolina. I'm just saying that or whatever. Don't want to, you know, condemn anybody or anything, but just know that there's a history and there's a culture behind in South Carolina and North Carolina, but mainly, yeah, you can look at South Carolina and there's a culture there. All right, not everywhere, but just it does exist there. Okay, so this something, you know, this is something that my co-host referred to before when he brought up gatekeeping a long time ago, and I think my eyes got big on the camera or whatever, and then we just didn't talk about it because we didn't cover it yet, right? Because you can see this is already an hour and 36 minutes. We're talking about gatekeeping and whatnot, and you can see that it can take about an hour or so. And he just said it in 1 second. So you can see all the context of what goes into him just saying this word. So anyways, you know, we may talk about this more often, more in the future, whatnot. Cage will probably be back on the show. You may be able to ask him that question, whatever. The time to actually bring that up sometimes is on a freestyle so that we can all look at it together. But that's here and there. Now, with the accusation of harassing the neighborhood, you know, harassing the neighborhood being thrown at him, DeAndre tried to explain himself, which anybody who is innocent tends to do. Now, he tried to explain to Jonathan Pentland that he lived there in the subdivision, and he lived there longer than Pentland. And Pentland got upset now. He proclaimed that they were a tight-knit community that took care of each other, and that we had never, that he had never seen DeAndre before. Knowing that DeAndre lives in the neighborhood, we're a tight-knit community, used to be a type of confrontation that definitely holds racial implications. And when Pentland, challenged DeAndre to get out of the space, DeAndre replied, you walked up to me. So all this is wrong, and they're just painting and creating this narrative already that's just like, you know, the police show up late or whatever, and they believe them, then this young man could be dead. Okay? Now, Pentland moved into DeAndre's face at that point when DeAndre was trying to, you know, explain himself. And he said, you walked up to me. And Pentland moved into DeAndre's face on the sidewalk now, mind you. Check it out, mother. You know, I ain't playing with you. Either get your moving or I'm going to move you. Pentland was so close to DeAndre, and DeAndre smelled alcohol on his breath. DeAndre said, you smell drunk, and turned away and started to walk away. And Pentland says, you want to bet, and starts following DeAndre again. Okay? I'm about to show you what I can do, is what follows, right? That's what he says. Or what Pentland says. And it is at that point that the U.S. Army drill sergeant, you know, at that time exhibited signs that he was straight up bullying DeAndre. There's no way around it. So let's look at the final portion of this video. I want to catch this, whatever. And what I want you to do is, like, during the first video, if you ever go back, during the first video, you saw that there were the two ladies, Shuler Jr. and Knight Osborne, were walking, you know, this direction. And so they saw that, and you're going to see them coming back now while all this altercation is happening, right? And you'll see how this kind of resulted or ended up. Because if not for Cheryl, you know, thank you, personal thank you from Panther and Cage to Shuler Jr. for walking back and dealing with this situation. Because this we've seen this happen before. We lost Trayvon Martin this way, and we're just tired of seeing black bodies. All right. Let's go ahead and take a look at this final video of the incident.
I'm about to show you what I can do.
I would suggest
You better walk away. Walk away. Walk away.
I'm walking. You keep following me, sir.
There's only one way out of here. It's right over there.
There's multiple ways out of here, sir.
You want to bet? Walk away.
I've been here before this subdivision.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, you've been harassing us for a while now.
I already know you, son. I don't even know your name.
Well, get to know me, because this is who I am.
Who are you?
It doesn't matter.
What's your name?
You don't
No,
need our
walk
name.
away.
Get out of here.
Officer of the law?
I'm about to throw you out.
You can't.
You want a belt?
Hey.
I can do a hell of a lot more than you think I can. Just move along.
Sir, you're acting like a child. Move on. You get with a random young lady that's one of our neighbors. Get out of
Then
here.
what?
Why pick the fight when someone ran up?
All I heard was you fighting and her
Alright.
defending herself.
Fighting what?
Hey, come on. What's your name? Come on, you don't want no trouble.
Those people.
You've been here for 15 minutes now. So petty, man. You're acting like a child. DeAndre begins walking away. And at that point, you saw Cheryl Johnson walking with her friend Vignetta Yvonne Knight Osborne. And you saw them come back around. And then you're going to notice that, as we were breaking down that video, you notice that, Jonathan Pentland brings his voice down just as Cheryl Johnson and her friend, Knight Osborne, are standing by observing at an even closer proximity, right? And I'm not exaggerating here, because if you checked it out, if you go back and take a look at it, Cassie Pentland at that point began attempting to control the narrative of what was actually going on. And she says, "Sir, you're acting like a child. Move on. You picked a fight with some random young lady that's one of our neighbors. Get out of here." That's a lie. Okay? You're going to see where this comes out. He picked the fight. Watch this. DeAndre then can be heard replying to her that he didn't pick a fight with anyone, and that someone, which was Hernandez, she ran up on him. This is when Cassie reveals that even she didn't know the whole story, but was willing to jump into a situation and start ostracizing DeAndre. And Cassie says, "All I heard was you fighting and her defending herself." So collectively, they acted on limited information, causing a very manageable situation to turn into a fiasco that's leading to Jonathan Pentland's arrest. Now, I had a video to show about Jonathan Pentland's arrest, but I didn't get a chance to go ahead and get that uploaded in there. I'm not even going to fight with it. It's time to just move forward on this, because it's already an hour 42, right? Now, the point was to show that arrest. It was to show the protest that was occurring, okay? And I'm trying to see, I'm waiting for this lag to make sure. Okay, there it is. So it was to show this, that the protest began as peaceful, but then it did turn violent. Violent as they were throwing, I think they threw some eggs or something at his garage door or something like that. And that's when the police came back, and they then decided to remove him from the premises. And I think that's when the arrest actually happened. So some people say it was an arrest, some people say it was just an escort or whatnot. But in any way, it was reported by the media that, Pentland was arrested. So, if that was the case of them creating a narrative and acting on this limited information just to jump in and create this narrative or whatever that can cause, a lot of harm to this young man. Because she said all she heard was DeAndre fighting and Hernandez, Elizabeth Hernandez was her name, defending herself. How in the world are they not, allowing him to explain himself? Because they weren't trying to figure it out, right? So why do you keep interrupting him as he's trying to give his side of the story? Why would you call the cops if you don't know what's happening? Why would you be willing to make a report when they don't know all the facts? Wouldn't that be a waste of the police officer's time and waste of taxpayer-funded public service? Shouldn't there be a penalty for that? These are the legitimate questions that that I'm asking, and it's because something like this occurs too commonly. All right, and because that is somewhere where something that incites protest. It's an incident that's just perfect for me to break down back in April. However, I was waiting for more information to come out because I thought that I can make a more accurate assessment of what was going on here, right? And they've been living in the Summit subdivision for about a year. All right, so why didn't the Pentlands know their neighbors? DeAndre did indeed live there in the Summit subdivision. Also, so Jonathan Pentland and his wife hadn't seen him before. So they just don't get to know their neighbors. You've been living there for about a year and you don't know who your neighbors are, right? So DeAndre is walking around the area. Now, is that common behavior for DeAndre? That's another question we got to ask, right? So based on the knowledge of the surrounding questions, why was Jonathan Pentland's callous reaction so strong if you didn't know this kid? You know, did Jonathan Pentland just not know the frequent walkers and walkers and his neighbors? Because obviously, you know, it was no issue for Cheryl Johnson and Yvonne Knight Osborne to walk through the community. So why did he react this way to DeAndre by walking through the community? It's a lot of questions, right? I know. We're going to get to review some of the facts dealing with the case surrounding the incident tonight. We're about to get into this. Now, let's bring this back up real quick because it's important. So like I said, what we do here is we destroy these negative narratives that people love to use. Now, I've heard this before, seen this comment mentioned many times before, right here in this Let's Talk About It group. And before the group was actually formed, I saw this. I think this is on Willie Taylor's pages where I saw it. But, you know, we talked about this before. Now, I wanted to say that this reminded me of a time when the police was called on me because I was sitting in my car scrolling on my phone after a long, frustrating day of apartment hunting. And as the police came to my door, asking me for my driver's license and then telling me I had to park my car facing forward from now on. And I felt disgusted at the fact that I could be reprimanded for something like sitting in my own car watching a video on YouTube. I just thought about it, like how the police could just be used, how could they, literally, and I said this, how the police could just be pimped into unnecessary engagements with people who are just trying to go about their every day. Now, the person that called the police on me likely told the police some kind of exaggeration and created a narrative like the Pentlands did to get them to even come. But I think there were 3 or 4 police cars, and I know there were at least 3 officers that were dealing with the entire situation. And what made them all show up, I can't really say. I just know my kids witnessed me needlessly engaging with law enforcement, even though I had not committed a crime. Now, ultimately, I faced consequences because my neighbor held a racial animosity in his heart, right? And that was him being racist. That was exposed when he was involved in a highly microaggressive altercation with his Black roommate later on. Now, this kind of experience is no exception because yesterday evening, I saw an elderly white woman at Palm Bay, Florida gas station, and she pulled up to a pump that I've known to last month to, it's actually been out of order for about a month and a half now. Now, there was an orange cone that was blocking the entry or access to that pump. However, she ignored that cone and ended up driving around the cone and attempted to pump the gas. And she was attempting to use the pump. A middle-aged African-American man tried to walk up to her about using that specific pump. And he said that pump wasn't working properly. He was extremely nice and he appeared to be trying to help her if, she was not completely understanding that the pump was known to malfunction. Now, as I said this before, it has been about a month and a half, and I've known this pump myself to have been out of order. I know that because back in July, I was getting gas, and there was this attractive woman who was she was trying to use her gas pump, which was on the other side of my pump, and her card wasn't working. Okay, and she had to get the gas attendant to make her, the gas attendant was a female. She had to get a gas attendant to make her aware of the problem. And it was at that point the gas attendant instructed, the attractive woman to try to use another pump, and that, she would just place an out of order sign on the pump. Now, the old woman who was trying to use the pump yesterday, she ignored the nice African American man's concerns. And when her side of the pump wasn't functioning correctly, the gas attendant, who this time that gas attendant was a young African-American man, he came over to explain to her that the pump was out of order, and that was why he placed the orange cone in front of the pump. The elderly woman then started to get belligerent with, in her response to him. She ended up saying, obviously, I didn't drive over the cone. Now, which that could have even been true, right? But that didn't mean that she didn't back into it or drive around it, okay? She then proceeded to give that young man the nastiest stare as he backed away and walked back to the gas station attendant booth, right? She stared at him the entire time and walked back to, as he walked back to that point. And when she was sitting there staring, she was giving him that death stare or whatever. She looked up and she saw me looking at her. Okay. Now I'm right there pumping my gas and I'm just like looking at it. And that's for a brief moment, she changed her stare to target me. And she started staring at me kind of hard. And I stared her right back in the eyes. And I was like, as if to say, don't get your feelings hurt today, Grandma. I'm not the one you want to test today. Now, I'm not usually like that, with especially with the elderly people. But I knew at this point what I was seeing was that death stare. She then moved those hateful staring eyes back to that black gas station attendant. And he was watching through the window. Now, her indifference affected me so much to the point that when I got done paying for my gas, I walked over to him and I said, hey, man, be careful out here. September 2021. And we have apologists special pleading their way out of the acknowledgement of racism's impact today. Now, it impacted me enough to go say something to that young man. And the lady, she went down the street to the Wawa. That's all I want to say about her. She didn't get gas. She just went down to the Wawa. They know these people who deny this stuff, they know that racism exists, but in the same breath, they deny white privilege. And it impacts the African-American man. And that can, the African-American man who can't express these microaggressive behaviors frequently because the victimization that will be used as a narrative against us. And that is why the fallacy of special pleading is important. The same mentality that's used to diminish the impact of racism is the same mentality that's used to gatekeep. If you notice that, that's the strange, twisted part about that. And getting back to this incident now, because I want to just kind of get back to that so we can close this out. But the Richland County Sheriff's Department said that, in April that there were 2 previous incidents that were reported to the deputies that, involved DeAndre, him involving him touching a woman without consent. And the other involved him allegedly picking up a baby without permission. Now, in order for us to talk about those incidents, we have to address what ultimately resulted from this incident. All right. So let me go ahead and get to, just wanted to get that off, but I want to talk about that negative narrative and destroy that and get to the conclusion of this. Jonathan Pentland was found guilty of third-degree assault battery. Reporting stated that, Judge DeAndre Hightower ordered Pentland the option to pay $1,087 as a fine or spend 30 days in jail for the misdemeanor charge. But Benjamin Stitley, an attorney for the Pentland, said he's looking into challenge the decision. Stitley states, we are, of course, disappointed with the judge's decision, and we're looking into the further pursuing legal remedies to challenge the decision, as quoted in several of the local media outlets. And Mr. Pentland stands by his right to defend his family and home from a genuine threat and is deeply hurt by the situation. The bench trial does not include a jury. Instead, the judge determines the verdict. So taking the stand during the bench trial, Pentland said that a neighbor banged on his door and asked for help. The neighbor said that DeAndre had been bothering her daughter and grandson. So this is the grandma, okay, that ran over to grab Pentland, okay, for DeAndre. Not what the original narrative was, right? DeAndre going up to Pentland. So you see that lie, and this is how this stuff gets so messed up. DeAndre stated he minded his own business before Pentland approached him. Pentland's defense attorneys didn't deny what happened on the video. Of course, again, because you got the video. But they said the video lacked crucial context of what went back several days. Pentland's attorney claimed that there was a lack of investigation into the background factors regarding DeAndre Williams's actions leading up to the small portion of the encounter that they captured on video. All right. And Pentland's attorney decried the way people labeled Pentland as a bully and racist. And he was defending he said he was defending his family and his friends. And that the altercation was based on the behavior of DeAndre, who before the cameras were turned on, that Pentland's actions were justified, right? So several witnesses said that Williams, okay, DeAndre, was acting erratic or volatile before the incident. The department claimed that DeAndre had an underlying medical condition that may explain his behavior and that why it exhibited some alleged, in these alleged incidents. So Williams' father testified that his son was once a high-performing student, but he suffered from potential brain damage after suffering from a type of cancer known as lymphoma. Now, Williams' father testified that DeAndre is now in remission and suffers swelling throughout his lymph system and in his brain. And as a result, Williams struggles with basic, tasks, and such as getting groceries without assistance. Now, I knew something was up. Like I said, I questioned, the fact that, there was some mental capacity here, an issue about it, right? So he was supposedly suffering from lymphoma, or had suffered in the past from lymphoma, and this could explain, especially we're talking about swelling of the brain, right? So many types of cancer can develop in the white blood cells, which are called lymphocytes, which are a part of the body's lymphatic system. And there are different kinds of lymphocytes, each with their own different function. There are the B lymphocytes, which produce antibodies, which fight bacteria and infection in the body. There are T lymphocytes, which destroy any foreign cells and viruses in the body. And they also signal to those B lymphocytes to make more antibodies. And then you have these, what they call natural killer cells, I guess, and they work to destroy the invaders. Why did I just get a thought of? No. Including viruses and sometimes cancer cells. Now, so this is important. So when these cells start to change or they start growing out of control, which is cancer, what cancer does, right? Cancerous masses or tumors can develop. Now, what you want to do is you guys want to go and you want to Google lymphoma, okay? And just click on the images and you're going to see a lot of, you're just going to see some very, iffy like images, and it's going to mess with you a little bit. But like I said, we're talking about these cells that start growing out of control. This is what cancer is, everybody. So because they're located in several different areas of the body, like, you see being identified by the red markers in on this picture to my left, they can develop anywhere. Those tumors and those extra cell growth can happen anywhere. And they usually start in the lymph node, okay? Now, there are two primary types of lymphoma, all right? However, there are several subtypes. Those two are Hodgkin's lymphoma and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. These are two primary types. Now, non-Hodgkin lymphoma is more common, and the two most common subtypes being used to diffuse large B-cell lymphoma and follicular lymphoma. Now, a diagnosis is made after a biopsy is performed, and the pathologist looks at the cells underneath the microscope. And if the abnormal cell, which is known as a Reed sternum, I'm going through a lot of information, but it's just for you guys to go back, take a look and do the research yourself. But, this, like I said, these abnormal cell is called the Reed-Sternberg cell, and it is identified. Once it's identified, the lymphoma is classified as Hodgkin's lymphoma, all right? So if it's not identified, then the lymphoma is classified as non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, okay? So there's a little difference there, right? So people with weakened immune systems from HIV or AIDS, or those taking an immune suppressing medication after a transplant, are at an increased risk. So there's certain autoimmune diseases such as lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, and they have been shown to have an increased factor for developing lymphoma, right? So certain chemical exposures such as Agent Orange, benzene, or pesticides, they also increase that risk, right? Now the signs and the symptoms of lymphoma are different for each person, and they're dependent on where they are and where the, in the body the cancer is located. So in the beginning stages, they're not specific, which makes them easy to overlook. So the symptoms often differ depending on the type of lymphoma. The more common symptoms includes the swollen glands, fever, night sweats, fatigue, weight loss, cough, and shortness of breath. So DeAndre was in remission from a very painful and deadly form of lymphoma to have the symptoms of brain swelling, and is extremely indicative of lymphoma of the brain, right? I'm not saying that this is the official diagnosis for DeAndre, but this has to be taken in consideration. The fact that the primary cause of brain lymphoma is not known. the science, is yet to answer some of these causes for the ailments that, people suffer. So lymphoma that starts in the brain is more common to people at age 45, but the numbers are extremely variable and they are on the rise. They do know that. That's another example of how statistics, I hate statistics, but it's another example of how statistics doesn't give an accurate measurement, of impact. Just the fact that it's on the rise. So technology, gas prices, and rare genetic condition disorders or whatever are all on the rise, right? Although genetic conditions are unlikely due to non-genetic environmental factors, the point that I've been just making with all this information that I just threw at you guys is that we don't know the circumstances surrounding DeAndre's choice to go walking in his neighborhood. And it's simply that DeAndre may have just been taking a walk in the neighborhood, re-experiencing the world around him, given what looked like a second chance at life, potentially. He's probably excited to see a child playing and decided to pick the child up. Now, let's be real here for a moment. As a father who's helped raise more than one child, it warms my heart to see children trying to convince their parents to buy them some candy at the checkout lane. And in fact, just earlier this week, I was in Publix in Cocoa and the other day, and I saw a little baby boy in a stroller being pushed by his very young-looking father. And my words to that young-looking father was that enjoy it while you can, soak it up now, because time is going to fly, okay? And when they get older, they're going to look like this. And I pointed at my own children. And then I continue to say, they won't love you like that anymore. Of course, it was a level of sarcasm with that, but that was only meant as words of encouragement, because I know that, he has quite a long way to go. And he must get, he must, you can't just go get a book, to show you how to deal with kids or whatnot, but you can go get a book as a dad. You can go get a book on corny dad jokes and pranks to lay the foundation of what makes a good dad. So just trying to give him some encouragement. But that's my point, man. DeAndre was probably looking to experience life by making new friends. And so he was probably willing to do or say anything to reconnect with people. We don't know that, right? So you hear him mention that he lived there before that whole subdivision was built. We probably want to explore this neighborhood and was somewhere along the line, the memo just wasn't passed, that I guess he didn't have the privilege to do that. The neighborhood was a collection of families. Neighborhood is a collection of families that share common interests of the progression of that neighborhood, right? Now, this is a place where families come out and they share fireworks on the 4th of July, right? Or even certain treats and gifts and when a neighbor is celebrating a birthday. But I guess since segregation was rescinded, some sort of unspoken authority checked or revoking the access to the neighborhood that was given to those who gatekeep, right? Now, going through that kind of thing or whatever is traumatic, I'm sure. So him picking up a little kid, let's go deeper into that. Kimberly Hernandez, who lives in the Summit, the lady that was standing behind him, she testified the days before the event that several of her family members had disturbing encounters with DeAndre Williams, and that she testified that Williams frequently approached her daughters while they were walking their dog outside of the neighborhood. She says, I don't care if he walks in the area. I didn't want him stopping my daughter anytime he was outside. Let me get this off the screen. Sorry about that. Forgot about that. But I want to know is what was said when he approached her daughter. Is there something lewd that he said? Was there something threatening? The Pentland lawyer claims that there were details surrounding the circumstance of the event, what happened previously, and that he led up to that. That's what led up to the incident. So what elicited the response that DeAndre received, because that's just the information that appears that this was a case where Kimberly Hernandez wasn't happy with DeAndre talking to her daughter. I could be wrong, but here's where this is going to get very sketchy. So Hernandez testified that in a separate encounter, DeAndre allegedly picked up a baby belonging to Hernandez's daughter-in-law. And following the incident where Williams allegedly picked up the baby, Hernandez's daughter-in-law went outside on April the 12th, the day of the incident, and she confronted DeAndre, saying that he had no permission to touch her child. And this is what this is. On a separate day, DeAndre is basically, ran up on by one of these girls who says that's where this whole incident was about. He harassing the neighborhood because he picked up a baby. There's loads and loads of stuff on that. Anyways, we have to unravel the facts. We have to understand that the words are being used because the misconception can happen. And the initial statement that Hernandez testified on a separate encounter was DeAndre picked up the baby belonging to her daughter-in-law, and we know that that's vague. So because it was a separate encounter, we're all left to assume that this separate encounter occurred a day or so, or maybe days before April 12th. But that's no there's no confrontation in this separate encounter, right? But reporting states that following the incident, DeAndre allegedly picked up the baby. Hernandez's daughter-in-law went outside to confront him on the 12th. So I guess she wasn't home watching the kids in this issue, whatever. All this stuff comes in. It just gets so convoluted, so crazy. So you're welcome to have your opinion, and welcome to share your opinion. But we're led to believe that this argument that the neighborhood was witnessing was sourced by an incident, days before. And in attempting to explain himself, no one was giving DeAndre the opportunity. And they treated him like he wasn't privileged enough for simple respect. Now, y'all can remember when Cassie said that she didn't know the whole story. All she heard was her fight, was him fighting and her defending herself. Now, then you hear, I went outside expecting them. This is what the testimony said. I went out, Kimberly Hernandez says, I went outside expecting them to be right outside and saw my daughter-in-law arguing with him. And I told her to quickly come back in the house. The daughter-in-law came back into the house, but Williams was following. And he was angry at the time that he approached Hernandez, is what Hernandez is testifying. He was acting erratic and jumping back and forth. He was telling me he did nothing wrong. Williams testified, or Williams was yelling so loud, what Hernandez testified, that he got so close, he was unintentionally spitting in her face. She said, I would think he started to walk away, but immediately he came back to me. So DeAndre approaching her seemed irrational for her enough that she went outside the Pentland's house, ringing the doorbell and banging on the door. After seeing Hernandez and William arguing, another neighbor by the name of Renee Wilson, who also was Black, the report states, testified that she called 911. And after hearing the man and the woman scream louder and louder at each other, she called the police, she called 911, and she stated that it just seemed like it was about to get worse. Around that time, Wilson called 911. Hernandez and Williams stopped arguing. So the argument ended, right? And Hernandez went over to Pentland's house. So it's not done. And then start banging on the door. Now, this was stated by other multiple witnesses. Almost done, guys. The assault captured on video, the second of 3 times Pentland put his hands on Williams, said that the first separate alleged shove happened just minutes before the video started. The second was caught on video, and Pentland swatted the phone out of Williams' hand. Pentland testified that he didn't physically touch Williams, but Williams said that Pentland caught his arm. This is what Pentland says. All I did was swat the phone out of his hand. I never wanted to break his phone. Remember, they were saying that he stepped on the phone, right? So as the video altercation went viral and drew backlash, Sheriff Leon Lott decided to file charges against Pentland, even though Pentland was still being interviewed by the investigator. And this is what an individual who worked for the Sheriff's Department, McDaniels, testified. Get this, face political pressure to arrest Pentland for the assault after the video is the defense that the Pentland's defense raised. They claimed that the police made several mistakes in conducting the investigation. While on the stand, Richland County Sheriff's Department employee First Sergeant Sean Walter McDaniels admitted that he did not obtain audio from the original 911 call to see why police were called there in the first place. But in all the investigations, when the sheriff made the warrant, not all of them came and asked the people who lived there what happened. That's what Pentland's attorney stated now. He said that in a closing statement that that no one wanted the truth. They wanted to make up a bully for TD's sake. Now the defense argued this political interference, but McDaniel said the evidence is strong enough against Pentland that he would have signed the arrest warrant without Lott's involvement. Now McDaniels said that the video speaks for itself, which we saw it, and the threat was talking to his wife. The threat was not him walking towards his wife, but in observing the video that he noticed that there were several attempts for Williams where he tried to de-escalate the situation. Now, the prosecution's closing statements, they played the body cam video of the officer, and Pentland immediately showed the incident Following the incident, said Pentland said, "I apologize and I should not have gotten as aggressive as I did." But for his part, Pentland stood for his actions, testifying, "If I were in the situation again, I'd do the same thing. I can't let someone threaten my family." And this speaks to several issues spanning race relations today, like the bootstrap theory that we talked about recently, where a specific segment of society perpetuates Black inferiority, saying you need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But then we see these African Americans in proximity to them, and they can't believe it. Like the Pentlands, when responding to DeAndre's claim that he lived in the neighborhood, as if they don't believe DeAndre's mother and father pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and lived in this affluent community. All of a sudden, in that moment, them pulling themselves up by the bootstrap, all of a sudden there's a problem, right? Because you don't belong in these parts because I've never seen you here. That's the kind of mentality we're talking about. Gatekeeping, the activity of controlling the general access to something. Whether you're going to limit the access or just block them altogether, this is a process through something or anything is filtered, okay? Now you do the research on this yourself, and you'll find out that commonly it's a term that's used as an academic theory that's founded in multiple fields of study to include communications, communication studies, journalism, which is the same thing, political science, which is this whole development in the left, liberal, right, conservative labels that, for all intents and purposes have been used to have these conversations, this whole movement. And then it's identified as sociology. So if you simply do your research online, you find in context about this topic underneath the term racial gatekeeping. And what does that mean? This kind of intolerant attitude is the problem that we are seeing when we see these Karens all over social media. And it appears to be akin to the same attitude of the past when the caste system was socially accepted. It is reminiscent of a time when checking our slave papers, for our identification card, even though this man's particular slave papers happen to check out, and they feel threatened. Now, I don't want to take down a negative narrative just to replace it with another one, but apparently Jonathan Pentland didn't learn. And I speculate that I suspect, and I can speculate and articulate that because I remember he stood by his actions to do the same thing again, because he could not let someone threaten his family. And there were levels to that narrative, okay? Levels that were associated with, being a man and having the responsibility of being a provider and specifically a protector. But based on Jonathan Pentland's behavior, it was much more than protecting his wife, who was out there instigating the situation. And I know that there are podcasts out there that are currently talking about the value of a woman who instigates. So putting her husband in a position that could potentially compromise her entire family because the principles of Western society, which dictate that a man upholds these principalities of being a man, and that responsibility is commonly known as the protector and the provider. Now, also expresses behavior is much more likely because he really accosted this young man. But we got to think about that. Like Zimmerman, tracking down Trayvon Martin, what would it have been like if this man was a man like Kimbo Slice or Michael Jai White? You can almost assuredly bet that energy would be different. All right. Gatekeeping, process through which something is filtered or someone who is subjected to the access of anything controlled as an academic theory, whatever. It's an attitude. And it's more than a display of implicit bias. It is an indifferent mentality that led to the behavior that killed Elijah McClain. This is a kind of apathetic way of thinking that devised the way to murder Ahmaud Arbery. And Arbery, just like Terrence Crutcher, they were all termed as this threat. And they got shot for committing no crime against humanity. Now, Roland Martin covered this, and I would tell you to go look at Roland Martin Unfiltered with this issue of Jonathan Pentland. He brought up the fact towards the end of his live stream, this digital show, and he said that this happened because Black people were never intended to live comfortably in the same communities as white people. That the gatekeeping evidence that we just witnessed tonight, along with the fact that Republicans work together with Southern Democrats all those left liberal and right conservative crap junk that you guys going. He stated that the Republicans worked together with those Southern Dixiecrats to filibuster FDR's Fair Housing Act. And they did it for 3 years. As you know, he said that's proof that there's friction with Black people who are living in affluent communities. And this leads us into conversations about the similarities and the differences of the white-Black communities. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves without covering the details contributing to all these differences. Example is judging a person like Haley Clark's father did based on a person living in the ghetto. You remember when she said that they're animals? Now, that's where, judging a person like he did based on that a person living in the ghetto without examining the exceptions and also the complexities that occur, you become prone to making assessments that are inaccurate, that are erroneous, and downright bigoted. Now, I know it's hard for a person displaced from that kind of experience, or the issues to understand that when you put a person in order, when you put a person in that kind of a situation, in order for them to survive, they have to adapt. You put them in that environment and they have to adapt to the stimulus that's around them in order to survive. I know you guys understand that. And that's one of the several, adverse reactions or symptoms of systemic oppression. Anyway, we covered gatekeeping tonight and the special pleading fallacy. And I try to shove all this information down to you in less than 2 hours, but we are 15 minutes over. And I apologize for going that long, but these are terms that are very important when we have the discussion dealing about race relations, all right? And you can see how important it is because how frequently the issue actually comes up. And the many videos that we used tonight were just some of the examples. There's one that I felt was like the greatest example, but I didn't want to use it because I knew that it was racial implication. It was an older lady who was stopping the DoorDash guy or Uber Eats guy from entering, an apartment complex to deliver food. Now, could have used that, could explain that, but I always wanted these kind of vague ones so that we can go into a process of thinking. So I don't want you guys to just start labeling things. I want you to understand what it actually is. So that when you bring up a label, you're accurate. And you're accurate enough so we can move to the next step of solving this problem. So when I bring up gatekeeping, that's 2 hours of information that I just brought up. Quentin did it a while back, and I think it was lost on a lot of people. In fact, I know because I know our viewers usually tend to leave the room. We say the words white supremacy, which tonight's the first night of saying that. So, and there's issues with that. And I want to have a discussion about that, but that is going to be a group discussion. Anyway, it was my hope that, we just continue to move forward intellectually so that we can understand each other. Okay, that is my hope. That is my point. That when we're talking about these tangible solutions, we're talking about these tangible solutions for problems that occur in America today, not stuff that, that's irrelevant, And, I just wanted to give this, information, but, sorry it was so long, but we also got a little lesson on lymphoma tonight. I had to do that. I know that was a very long show, but I have to cover everything, that will become a potential problem in our interactions within this little personal quest for a solution to the bigotry that's on display today. And, I had a conversation with my co-host recently, a couple of days ago, if not a day ago, about how impactful an ignorant person can be when they're attempting to help fix a problem. It's a very interesting question that generated a lot of thoughts. Instead of dealing with the risk of just trudging ahead, I decided that I would sneak this conversation, this show in by talking about the creation, in between talking about the creation of the ghettos and how the ghettos impact the other communities. It also impacts the prison industrial complex, and we'll talk about how the ghettos impact the wealthy communities. Now, all of these contribute to the Black on Black violence that we keep noticing in these social circles that people use to affirm their whole collective comforts. But I hope that, this production of this Panther and Cage is going to move forward, and I hope that I'm able to complete the Irish American diaspora soon. There's just a few challenges I'm working through right now, and I'm going to be looking to bring you this conversation with a guest who can share their personal experience as well as their knowledge to help, get the solutions there that are beneficial, mutually beneficial. So I am, how you doing? What's going on, Amber? Didn't know you were watching. Hope everything is well with you. Sorry you just caught the end of the show if you just got in, but I just wanted to go ahead and close it out, give you guys that information. It's a lot of information. We definitely can cover this again. I just wanted to teach you guys what special pleading was because I see it so much, and it's just like, this pivoting. We wanted to answer that question, and then I wanted to tell you about gatekeeping because this is what you're seeing when you see these Karens. There's a lot to it. So I just wanted to give you that. I hope that you guys enjoyed the show. I know it was long, and I, apologize for that. I got to work on trying to get through this information faster. But I'm your host, Panther, and this has been Panther in Cage 23, Gatekeeping. All right. Go ahead and get this on so we can do it the right way. All right. Like I said, this has been Panther in Cage 23, special gatekeeping and special pleading. And as always, I'd like to thank this beautiful Panther in Cage viewing audience of Brevard County. I wish you all love, peace of mind, and may the Most High guide your path.